My name is Alina Marie Voss. I am 36 years old. And the morning my parents looked down at the plaintiff line on a court filing and saw my name printed there in 12-point Times New Roman, my mother's coffee cup tipped sideways and spilled across the conference table, and nobody moved to clean it up. That is not where I am going to start, though. I want to start somewhere smaller. I want to start with the envelope. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is where we share real life inspired tales of family conflict, betrayal, and the quiet strength it takes to stand your ground. If these stories speak to you, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. The envelope has been sitting in the inside pocket of my winter coat for 4 months before any of this happens. It is a legal size envelope, cream colored, the kind that feels slightly heavier than regular paper because it is. My name on the front in handwriting I have known since I was 7 years old. Aunt Cecilia's handwriting, slanted left, the E and Alina are always a little wider than the rest of the letters, the way she taught herself to write when she was young. She sealed it with a strip of clear tape across the flap, which is not something you do when you are planning to hand a letter to someone in person. That tape tells me she was not sure she would get the chance. I carry it with me everywhere during those 4 months. Through October and November and December and the first weeks of January. I wear that coat every day, the heavy wool one I bought at a Macy's in Columbus in 2021, the charcoal one with the silk lining and the two inside pockets, one of which now permanently belongs to that envelope. I have checked to make sure it is still there so many times that I have stopped thinking of it as checking. It is just something I do when I put the coat on. My right hand goes into the inside left pocket for about half a second. The envelope is there, I button the coat. I do not open it. I want to tell you what kind of woman my Aunt Cecilia is because that matters for all of it. She is my father's older sister, 12 years his senior, which means she has always occupied a slightly different category than parent but not quite peer. She raised my father for 2 years when he was between 7 and 9 after their mother had the first bout of cardiac trouble that would follow her for the rest of her life. She raised him meaning she got him to school and made sure he ate dinner and signed his permission slips for field trips and checked his homework and held his life together while their mother was in and out of the hospital and their father was working 2 shifts trying to pay the bills. She was 19 and 20 years old when she did this. She never spoke about it as a burden. She spoke about it, when she spoke about it at all, as something that happened and that she was glad to have been there for. She is 71 years old, has been 71 since last March. She taught high school English for 34 years at Fairview High School in Dayton, Ohio, retiring in 2016, and she is the kind of teacher that students remember not because she was warm in an obvious way, but because she was fair in a way that felt radical by the time most of them got to her classroom. She has a subscription to 3 different seed catalogs, and she reads them the way other people read novels, slowly and with attention and with a pencil making small marks in the margins. She calls me 2 days before my birthday every year, not on the day, 2 days before, and she says, I'm calling early so the day itself can belong to you. She does not perform warmth, she shows up. There is a difference, and she is the person who taught me to see it. When I was 12, she drove from Dayton to Columbus, 2 hours, to watch me compete in the Ohio Regional Spelling Bee at the Convention Center on North High Street. I was one of 32 kids from across the state. I misspelled pharisaical in the 7th round. I knew the etymology, I just inverted 2 letters in the middle and stood there hearing the bell sound and feeling the air go out of the room. On the drive home, which she made with me in her car while my parents took their own car ahead of us, she said, That's a word most adults couldn't spell either. You got further than most people will in their entire academic career, and you should sit with that. Then she said, Are you hungry? I said yes. We stopped at a Cracker Barrel off I-70 near Springfield, and she let me order the chicken and dumpling soup and a piece of peach cobbler and then a second piece of peach cobbler when I finished the first one. She did not say anything about dinner being close. She did not say anything about sugar. She let me eat until I felt better, which is a form of understanding that I have tried my whole adult life to practice with the people I work with. She is also the only person in my family who, when my parents told me I was dead to them in January of 2020, called me 4 days later and said exactly this. I want you to know I don't agree with what they did and I'm not going to pretend I do. She said it simply the way she says everything. No drama, no speeches, no drawn-out expressions of solidarity that ask for something back. She just said it, and then she asked me how I was eating, and then we talked for an hour about her backyard project and a book she was reading about the New Deal. She is the person who handed me an envelope in September and said you'll know when it's time. She was not wrong. The envelope arrives, I say arrives, but she hands it to me in person, which I will get to in October of 2023. I am living in Columbus at that point, a one-bedroom apartment in Grandview Heights on West 3rd Avenue, the second floor of a converted Victorian that has the original floors and enough radiator noise in winter to feel like company. I have been in Columbus for 2 years. Before that, I spent 3 years in Cleveland, a period I think of mostly in terms of the lake, the way it sat at the end of every east-west street, gray and enormous and indifferent in the particular way that large bodies of water are. Before Cleveland, I was in Denver for 18 months, which was a mistake made for a man named Christopher who turned out to be a much larger mistake than Denver itself was, and I have made peace with that. I am doing fine in Columbus. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I work at a community mental health center on West 5th Avenue called Westview Behavioral Health. I carry a caseload of 22 active clients and I supervise 2 practicum students from OSU. I make $58,000 a year, which in Grandview covers what I need it to cover. I am not flourishing in the way that word sounds on social media, where it implies something visible and ascending. I am steady. I have learned in my mid-30s that steady is harder to build than flourishing and lasts longer. I run in the mornings along the Olentangy Trail. I have a therapist named Dr. Alicia Park on East Broad Street who I see every other Thursday and who does not let me get away with performing insight instead of having it. I have 3 people I would call close friends, all of them in Columbus now, 1 from college, 2 from work. I cook on Sundays and eat the results all week, which is a system that sounds efficient and is also genuinely something I look forward to. My family exists at a distance. My parents, David and Patricia Voss, are in Kettering, which is a suburb south of Dayton, about an hour and 40 minutes from Columbus, in the same house I grew up in, the one on Ironwood Court that my father bought in 1991 for $178,000, and that is now worth, according to the last Zillow estimate I looked at on a night when I probably should not have been looking, $312,000. My brother Daniel is in Cincinnati with his wife Stephanie. They have 2 children I have not met. I know this from Cecilia, not from them. My parents said I was dead to them in January of 2020. I have not been in their house since December of 2019. I have not spoken to Daniel since the same month. I have not spoken to Stephanie since before that. These are facts I carry lightly now. For the first year, they were not light at all. I will tell you about that too, because it is part of this story, and also because I think it is the part of the story that the people listening actually need to hear, the part that nobody puts in the version they tell at Thanksgiving about the estranged relative. Not the drama, the ordinary aftermath, what it is actually like to carry an absence for 4 years and keep going. Here is what happened in January of 2020. My mother is named Patricia Louise Voss, born Patricia Louise Danver in Huber Heights, Ohio in 1955. She's a careful woman. She keeps a clean house, and a tended garden, and a well-managed schedule. She was the office manager for a large pediatric practice in Kettering, Kettering Pediatric Associates, for 23 years, retiring in 2018, and she was very good at that job. The doctors trusted her. The parents trusted her. She knew every family's situation, and she was discreet about it in the way that only people who have earned real trust can be. She has a talent for making people feel seen without revealing whether she actually sees them. My father is David Allen Voss, born in Dayton in 1953, civil engineer for the City of Dayton Public Works Department for 31 years, retired in 2017 with a pension and a good reputation and the specific contentment of a man who has done his job well and knows it. He is not a complex man, which I say with respect. He does not pursue complexity. He likes things clear and manageable and in their proper places. He coached my brother's youth soccer team for 4 years. He fixes things that break in the house before they are asked to. He loves my mother in the steady, particular way of people who chose well and know it and do not need to make a production of it. They are good people in many of the ways that matter. This is important to say. I do not want to tell this story the way it would be easy to tell it, which is the way where my parents are simply bad people who did a bad thing. That would be simpler and it would not be true. The truth is more uncomfortable. The truth is that they are good people who did something genuinely cruel in a moment when the people they loved most were pulling in different directions and they chose without thinking it fully through. My brother Daniel is 2 years younger than me. He is 34 now. He graduated from Wright State with a degree in business administration in 2012, and by 2019 he is a regional sales manager for a medical device company called MedPath Innovations out of a Cincinnati office, which means he makes good money, has a company car, goes to conferences, and is measurably good at the particular skill of making people feel comfortable in his presence. He calls our parents twice a week. He shows up for every birthday and holiday and backyard cookout. He is the son who did the thing that sons in his generation were supposed to do, which is stay close and be present and build a life that looks from the outside like success. He is not a bad person. I want to be honest about that. He is comfortable, and comfort has a way of making the people inside it slow to question what sustains it. The woman who comes into his life in 2017 is Stephanie Chen Voss, born Stephanie Chen in Mason, Ohio, and she is one of the most socially intelligent people I have ever been in a room with. I do not say that as a compliment exactly. I say it as an observation. She understood within the first 8 months of knowing my family exactly what each person in it needed to hear in order to feel good about themselves and good about her. She understood what my mother needed from a daughter-in-law, and she delivered it. She understood what my father needed from the next generation, and she delivered that too. She started a podcast in 2018 called Intentional Living with Stephanie V about slow living and mindful home management and the spiritual dimensions of household routines, and it has, as of the last time Cecilia mentioned it to me, approximately 40,000 subscribers. She mentioned my mother's garden in an episode in 2019, described the way my mother tends her roses in terms that were genuinely beautiful, and my mother listened to it 4 times. I am not going to tell you that I like Stephanie. I am going to tell you that I found her difficult to read, and I am trained to read people, and that bothered me more than I let anyone know. I am also going to tell you that from the first dinner we all had together in February of 2018, the one where Daniel brought her to meet us, I noticed specific things. The way she redirected any conversation that was moving toward my work or my life back toward Daniel or toward my parents. The way she agreed with my mother in a way that had no seams in it, no friction, as though she had done research. The way she touched my father's arm when he made a joke, this comfortable proprietary gesture, and my father visibly grew 3 inches. The way she looked at me when she did, with a warmth that was perfectly calibrated and somehow landed about an inch behind my sternum and did not take hold. By 2019, she is calling my parents mom and dad. By 2019, Daniel and Stephanie are making suggestions about my parents' finances, small ones at first, a different financial advisor, a revocable living trust for simplicity, they said, for when the time comes, thinking about estate planning is just responsible. A conversation with a friend of Stephanie's who happens to work in wealth management at a firm in Cincinnati. My parents are not wealthy. They are comfortable, which in Ohio means the mortgage is paid off or nearly paid off, and the retirement accounts are in reasonable shape and there is no immediate crisis. But comfortable is enough. Comfortable is plenty to work with. I do not have a clear picture of what was being planned. I want to be honest about that. What I have are observations. What I have are the things I noticed and the questions I asked and the way those questions landed in rooms. At Christmas 2019, the last Christmas I am in that house, I say something at dinner. I do not make a speech. I do not accuse anyone of anything. I ask a question, which is something I do in my work constantly, which is something I should have known by now has a different effect when you do it inside a family. I ask, I think it is over the ham, I say something. Like, has anyone sat down and looked at what the trust actually says, like the actual document? And the table changes. I cannot describe it better than that. The table changes, the air changes. My mother sets her fork down and does not pick it up again for a full minute, and my father gets the weather ignoring look. Daniel clears his throat. Stephanie adjusts the napkin in her lap. Nobody answers my question. I did not fight at that dinner. I did not push it. I changed the subject to something about the Bengals and we got through dessert. But I know what I said and I know what the response was and I know how to read a room. 3 weeks later, my mother calls. It is January 11th, 2020. A Saturday. I am in my apartment in Cleveland at the time, the one on Euclid Avenue on the 6th floor of a building that has excellent light in the mornings and a radiator that sometimes sounds like it is being operated by someone with a grudge. It is 11 in the morning and I am doing laundry and reading a continuing education module about trauma-informed care that I need to finish for my license renewal. My phone rings and I see it is my mother's cell, not the house phone, which is the first thing I notice because she usually calls from the house phone. I answer. She says good morning in a way that has no good morning in it, and I know within 3 seconds that this is a different kind of call. She says that as a family they have had some conversations, her and my father and Daniel and Stephanie, and that they have made a decision. She says that my behavior, my attitude, my unwillingness to accept the choices that Daniel and Stephanie are making has been destructive. She uses that word 4 times in the space of about 2 minutes, destructive, the way people use a word when they have been practicing it. She says that I have always had difficulty accepting that the world does not revolve around me. She says that I have been difficult since I was a teenager and that they have tried and that it is exhausting and that they are done. Then she says, until you are ready to come back with a real apology and a real change in your behavior, you are dead to us. We are done with this. She breathes through her nose afterward. She does this when she is waiting for something to land. The thought I have in that exact pause is specific, and I remember it with total clarity. The thought is, I am going to need to write this down tonight before I forget the exact words. I say, okay, Mom. She says, that's it, that's all you have to say. I say, I don't know what else to say right now. There is another pause, shorter, and then she hangs up. I stand in my apartment for a moment. The laundry is running. The continuing education module is open on my laptop on the kitchen table. The light is coming through the east windows in that particular Cleveland winter way, very flat, very bright, making everything look more real than it actually is. My hands are cold even though the apartment is warm and I have been inside all morning. I close the laptop, I sit down on the couch. I do not cry, which is not because I am not feeling anything. I am feeling many things. I am feeling them somewhere below my sternum, a pressure that is not quite pain. I am feeling the specific quality of something you have seen coming for a long time finally arriving, which is its own kind of grief even when the arrival is a relief in some smaller way. I am feeling the edge of something enormous that I do not yet have the capacity to see the full shape of. I sit on the couch for about 40 minutes. Then I get up, make tea, and I open the notebook I keep on my bedside table and I write the date and I write down what my mother said in as close to her exact words as I can recall. I am meticulous about this. I do it the way I do case notes at work in specific and measured language without editorializing. I write, Mom said we are done with this. Mom said you are dead to us. Then I close the notebook and I put it on the shelf of my closet with my other notebooks, the ones I have been keeping since I was 19. I finish the continuing education module. I transfer my laundry to the dryer. I make dinner. I do not call them back that day. I do not call them back that week. I do not send an email. I do not send a letter. I do not contact Daniel. I sit with what has happened the way you sit with weather, not fighting it and not ignoring it, just letting it be what it is and making adjustments. 4 days later, Cecilia calls. She says, Aliner. She says my name first, the way she always does, as though the name itself is a greeting. I say, hi, Cs. She says, I want you to know I don't agree with what they did, and I'm not going to pretend I do. That is all she says about it directly. No blame, no detailed analysis, no invitation to relitigate, just the statement of where she stands, clean and unambiguous. Then she says, how are you eating? I tell her I have been making soup, which is true. I have been making a big pot of vegetable soup every Sunday and eating it all week, which is both practical and also something I do when I need to feel like I am taking care of myself even in small ways. She says that's a good sign. What kind? I tell her it is a white bean and kale situation with a Parmesan rind in it, which I read about somewhere. She says that sounds good. I put a Parmesan rind in my chicken soup and never went back. We talk for an hour about her garden and a book she is reading about Eleanor Roosevelt, which she keeps finding amusing because of the name. She does not bring my parents up again. Neither do I. We have reached, without discussing it, an understanding about what this subject means to both of us and how carefully it needs to be handled, which is to say that we step around it the way you step around something fragile on the floor without looking down to see it. In the 3 years that follow, my life continues. This is the part of the story that gets left out when people tell it dramatically, and it is the part I most want to tell you, because the reality of estrangement, the daily actual reality, is not dramatic. It is quiet in ways that are hard to describe. It is a Sunday phone call you don't make. It is a holiday you spend differently, not tragically, just differently. It is a birthday that passes and a text that doesn't arrive and the slow adjustment of your body to a new shape of things. Grief does not happen in one event. It happens in the ordinary world every day in small amounts that are easy to miss individually, but that accumulate into something you carry everywhere. I leave Cleveland in the summer of 2021 and move to Columbus for a position at Westview Behavioral Health. The position is a better fit. The supervision responsibilities something I have been working toward, and Columbus feels like a city I can build something in, which is different from the way Cleveland felt, which was like a city I was passing through during a difficult season. I find the apartment in Grandview in August of 2021 and I like it immediately. The old floors, the radiator noise, the east light in the mornings. I sign the lease and I start building. I get a small raise in March of 2022, bringing me to $58,000. I run along the Olentangy Trail most mornings at 6:15, which is not something anyone who knew me before my 30s would believe about me because I was not an athlete, but there is something about the specific rhythm of running in the early morning, the city not yet fully awake, the trail mostly empty, that I find is the only thing that consistently settles the specific kind of restlessness that comes from doing difficult emotional labor all day at work. It does not cure anything. It just makes room. Dr. Alicia Park is my therapist from the fall of 2021 onward, and I see her in her office on East Broad Street, a second-floor suite with cream walls and two good chairs facing each other and a white noise machine outside the door. She is not warm in the way some therapists try to perform warmth. She is curious and precise, and she has a way of asking a question that shows she has actually been listening to the previous 10 questions, that she is tracking something over time, that she does not let the needle drop. I trust her for this reason. She asks me in our second session what I am most afraid of, and I think for a long time, and I say I am most afraid of having wasted years of goodwill on people who will never be able to receive it. She writes nothing down. She just says, "Tell me more about that." I tell her more about it over many sessions. What I learn slowly is that the thing I have been calling grief is also anger, and the thing I have been calling anger is also something closer to sadness for a version of my family that I wanted to be true and isn't, and underneath all of it is something that takes me about a year to be able to name, which is love. I still love them, my mother and my father, even in the estrangement, even after what was said. I love them the way you love something that hurt you, which is honestly and carefully and with your eyes open about what it is. Cecilia and I talk every few weeks. The routine of it is its own kind of structure. She tells me about her backyard, about the raised bed she is building along the south fence for tomatoes, about the neighbor 2 doors down whose property is getting away from him, about a concert she went to at the Benjamin and Marion Schuster Performing Arts Center downtown with her friend Ruth, who I have never met. She asks about my work without pressing for details, because she understands that I cannot talk about my clients, but she asks in the general way, "How is the work feeling?" And I answer in the general way. The calls last 40 minutes to an hour, and I always feel when I hang up like the level in me has been topped off in some small but important way. In the summer of 2023, a Thursday evening call, she tells me she has been having some health things. She says it the way she says most things, directly and with minimum drama, as though she is reporting on the weather. She says her heart has been giving her some trouble. They have been monitoring it. She is on a medication. She is fine. She says she is doing all the right things, but she has been doing some organizing. She uses that word, organizing. I ask if she needs anything from me. She says, "Not right now, but I'd like to see you before winter." We make a plan for the last weekend in September. I drive up to Dayton on a Friday afternoon, I-70 west out of Columbus, the familiar stretch of highway that I have driven so many times I stop registering the specific towns and start registering it as a single extended experience of flatland and billboard and sky. I pull into her driveway on Farmersville Road in Germantown at around 6 in the evening. The house on Farmersville Road has been hers for 31 years. She bought it in 1992, a year after her husband Gerald died, which is a detail I have always found significant, though she has never commented on it. She wanted to stay in the Dayton area because she was teaching at Fairview and had 10 years left before retirement, but she wanted her own space, a new space, something that was hers in a way the house she shared with Gerald was not. She found the Farmersville Road house through a colleague, and she has been there ever since. It is a modest house, white siding, dark green shutters, a front porch with a glider that has been there since before I was born. The backyard has been her project. Every year it is different from the last. The raised bed along the south fence is new since 2022, and when I pull in and walk around the house to say hello, she is out there in the early September dusk, crouching next to the tomato plants, picking the last ones off the vine. She stands up when she sees me, and she looks exactly like herself, which is an odd thing to notice, but I notice it. She looks like Cecilia. She is wearing a flannel shirt and garden gloves, and her hair is shorter than the last time I saw her, a practical shorter length gray that suits her. She takes the gloves off and she shakes my hand, which is how she greets me always, a firm handshake, and I have loved it since I was a teenager because it says I regard you seriously as a person. "You look well," she says. "So do you," I say, and I mean it, and I am also aware that I am looking for things and finding none of them. She holds out 3 tomatoes from the pocket of her flannel. "Take these, I have more inside than I know what to do with." I take them. We spend 2 days doing nothing in particular. She shows me the raised bed and tells me what she put in it this year and what she will change next year. She has plans. She is already thinking about next spring. I find this deeply reassuring and do not say so. Saturday morning, she takes me to a diner on the edge of town that has been there since the 70s. the kind of place with a laminated menu and coffee served in heavy white mugs and eggs the way you actually want them, and we sit across from each other in a booth and eat without rushing. Saturday night, she makes chicken and wild rice soup. We eat at her kitchen table. The soup takes 3.5 hours, and it is worth every minute. Saturday evening, after dinner, I am doing the dishes and she is at the kitchen table with her reading glasses on and the seed catalog for Burpee open in front of her, and she says without looking up, "I've been doing a fair amount of thinking about things." I say, "Okay." She says about what I want to have in order, what I want to be clear about. She turns a page in the catalog. She is looking at a picture of a tomato variety I cannot identify from where I am standing. I say that sounds like a reasonable thing to be thinking about. She says it is, I've been working on it for a while. She does not say more than that evening. I do not ask. We watch part of a documentary about the Civilian Conservation Corps after dinner and she falls asleep in her chair and I cover her with the knit blanket from the couch and I finish the documentary alone and then I go to bed. Sunday morning, I am loading my bag into the car and she comes to the front door. She is holding the cream-colored envelope. She holds it out to me, both hands, the way you hand someone something you want them to receive with attention. I take it, it is heavier than I expect. She says, "Keep this somewhere safe, don't open it yet, you'll know when it's time." I look at it, my name on the front in her handwriting, the E in a leaner wider than the rest. She says, "Promise me you won't open it until you feel like you need to." I say, "Okay." She says, "I mean it, Alina, don't open it out of curiosity. Open it when you need to, you'll know the difference." I say, "I know." She reaches out and pats my hand. Two pats, the specific motion I have known my whole life, the one that means I love you and I trust you and go on now. Then she goes back inside. I stand next to my car for a minute in the September morning. The air already smells like October is right behind it, that specific smell of leaves beginning to release their moisture, of soil cooling. The tomato cages in the raised bed along the south fence catch the early light at an angle. A cardinal on the fence post watches me with the specific calm of a bird that has been watching people do things in this yard for years. I put the envelope in the inside pocket of my coat. I drive back to Columbus. 4 months pass. They pass the way months pass in the life of a working adult in her mid-30s, which is to say they are full and busy and the fullness is not dramatic, it is just continuous. October is rainy and I run anyway, which is something I could not have said about myself 2 years earlier. November is a holiday I spend in Columbus with my close friend Dana, who moved to Columbus from Akron 3 years ago for a job in urban planning and who has become, in the way of adult friendships, one of the people I can say anything to. We cook together at her apartment on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and we eat at her table with her partner and his brother and it is good. It is real. December comes and the cold settles in and I work more and run less and make a lot of soup and see Dr. Park and read and watch things on my laptop and call Cecilia. I call Cecilia the first Thursday in December and she sounds good. We talk for 45 minutes. She is planning what she is going to grow in the raised bed next year and has ordered seeds from 2 of the 3 catalogs and is waiting on the third. She says she has been sleeping better. She says the medication is working and she is walking every day, the neighborhood loop, 30 minutes, whatever the weather. I call her the first Thursday in January 2024 and there is no answer. I leave a voicemail. I call back 2 days later, still no answer. I tell myself she is at a neighbor's or an appointment. I leave another voicemail. The following Thursday evening, January 18th, I am in my apartment. It is after 8. I have been home since 6. I have eaten the last of the previous week's soup for dinner. I am still in my coat because I have not gotten around to hanging it up. I am standing at the kitchen counter eating crackers because I am hungry enough to need something else but too tired to arrange anything. Triscuits, the rosemary kind. The sun went down 2.5 hours ago and the apartment feels the way it feels in January, which is closer to the walls than in other months. My phone rings, a Dayton number I don't recognize, a 937 area code. My stomach drops and stays there. It drops the way things drop when you have been expecting a call and dreading it and making yourself believe it will not come. I answer. The woman on the phone says her name, which I hear and do not retain. She says she is a paralegal at a law firm in Dayton. She says the firm is called Hallstrom and Carey. She says she is calling regarding the estate of Cecilia Diane Voss. She says that Ms. Voss passed away on Tuesday, January 16th from a cardiac event. She says it was quick. She says the medical team indicated it was painless, which is something I understand she is saying for my sake and which I receive for that reason. She says that Ms. Voss had prepared her estate documents in advance and that there are matters requiring my attention. She says I should call the office when I am ready, that there is no urgent timeline but that 30 days is customary. She says she is sorry for my loss. I say thank you. I write the office number on a Whole Foods receipt that is on the counter. The handwriting is messier than usual, but I can read it. I hang up. The cracker is still in my hand. I set it on the counter next to the rest of the crackers. I stand there for a long time. The radiator makes the sound it makes. Upstairs there is no sound, which is unusual. My upstairs neighbor is usually home by this hour. I am thinking about her walking the neighborhood loop. 30 minutes, whatever the weather. I am thinking about the seed catalogs with the pencil marks in the margins. I am thinking about her at the kitchen table in the flannel shirt and the garden gloves and the 3 tomatoes in the pocket. I am thinking about the two-pat motion on my hand. Go on now. I am thinking about organizing. I take the envelope out of my coat pockets. I have been carrying it for 4 months in the inside left pocket, and I have never forgotten it was there, and I have never been tempted to open it until this moment, and this moment is the moment she meant. She knew. She said you'll know when it's time, and she was right. She was exactly right. Because right now is the only time this envelope could mean what it means. Standing in my kitchen in January with her voice on my voicemail from 3 weeks ago that I have not deleted, and the Triscuits on the counter and the wrong absence of sound from upstairs. I carry the envelope to the kitchen table. I sit down. I look at my name on the front. I open it. Inside is a letter, 3 pages, both sides of each page. 6 pages total, handwritten in her left slanting hand, the E in a leaner wider than the rest at the top of page 1. There is also a smaller sealed envelope tucked inside, business-sized, with a law firm address on the front. Hallstrom and Carey, 411 South Main Street, Dayton, Ohio 45402. I read the letter. I am not going to share all of it with you. Some of it is mine. But I will tell you what it says about the things this story is about, because she wrote it knowing I would eventually be telling someone this story or something like it, because she knew me well enough to know that I would not carry this alone forever. She writes that she has loved me since the day I was born and that she has watched me become someone she is profoundly proud of, and that she is sorry she did not say that directly and in those words more often. She writes that she knows she shows things through action rather than declaration, and that she has been trying to learn in the last few years to do both. She writes that she has always known certain things about the situation with my parents and with Daniel and Stephanie that she did not tell me, because telling me would not have helped me and would have made living my life harder. She writes that this was a choice she made deliberately. She writes that she is not sure it was always the right choice, but that it was the best one she could make with what she had. She writes that she believes I handled the estrangement with more grace than most people would have, and that she has said so to anyone who would listen. Then she writes about the property. She writes that the house on Farmersville Road is paid off entirely. She writes that she paid off the remaining balance of the mortgage in 2018. She writes that she has left the property to me, along with the contents of her savings account, which she writes is $143,000. She writes that she is not leaving anything to my parents or to Daniel. She writes this plainly, the way she says everything. She writes that this is not an act of revenge, it is an act of clarity. She has watched carefully, she writes, for several years, and she knows where things actually stand. Then she writes the part that I read 3 times. She writes that my parents have known about the will since October of 2022, when she told them directly, sitting at their kitchen table in Kettering over coffee, that she had made her estate decisions and that Alina was her primary beneficiary. She writes that their response was not acceptance. She writes that they hired an attorney. She writes that in the spring of 2023, through that attorney, they filed a preliminary notice with the Montgomery County Probate Court that they intended to contest any will that named me as a primary beneficiary. She writes that she anticipated this. She writes that she has been working with Hallstrom and Carey since 2021 to make certain that the will is unassailable. She uses that word, unassailable. She writes, I have made sure there is nothing to find. I have made sure the record is clear. The people at Hallstrom and Carey know exactly what they are doing and they will know exactly what to do. She writes, I am sorry I could not tell you any of this while it was happening. I was afraid it would change the way you were living. You have worked so hard to just live, Aliner. You deserved these past few years without carrying all of this on top of everything else. I carried it for you because I could. It was the most useful thing I could do. She writes, you'll know when it's time, and when it is, you'll know what to do. I read that last paragraph 3 times. Something happens in my body that is not crying and is not relief and is not grief and is all three of those things occurring at the same time, a particular physical sensation in my chest and throat and behind my eyes that I do not have a word for. My shoulders come down. I realize only because they come down that I have been holding them up, not recently, for years. The specific tension of being uncertain, of not knowing the full shape of what you are dealing with, of carrying something and not knowing exactly how heavy it is. It is close to midnight when I finish reading. I fold the letter back into the envelope carefully. I put the smaller envelope next to my phone where I will see it in the morning. I go to bed. I do not sleep for a long time. The ceiling of my apartment in the January dark, the radiator, the quiet of the building. I am holding her voice in my mind, not a specific thing she said, just the quality of her voice, the directness of it, the absence of waste in it. I let myself miss her. Deliberately, I realize, managing the information all evening, processing it efficiently the way I process things at work, and now I let myself just miss her. The chicken and wild rice soup, the seed catalogs with the pencil marks, the two-pat motion on my hand, the way she drove 2 hours to watch me compete in a spelling bee and let me eat 2 pieces of peach cobbler without comment. Have you ever had someone do something for you that they kept secret, and when you found out, you realized you had been protected by something you didn't know was there? How does it feel to be held by something invisible? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time, because what happens next is the part I have been building toward this whole time. I call Hallstrom and Carrie the next morning at 9 o'clock when they open. I speak with Margaret Hallstrom herself, one of the partners, and she is exactly as precise and thorough as Cecilia's letter led me to expect. She has been expecting my call. She knows who I am. She refers to Cecilia in the past tense with a kind of formal respect that acknowledges what has been lost without dwelling on it, which is how I need this conversation to go. She tells me the will was filed with the Montgomery County Probate Court in October of 2023. She tells me that a notice of contest was filed by my parents' attorney on December 9, 2023, 31 days after the will was filed. She tells me the grounds of the contest are alleged testamentary incapacity and undue influence. She says this flatly as a statement of what exists, not as something that alarms her. I ask her what she has. She takes a breath, the small, organized kind of breath that means she is about to be thorough. She says that Cecilia was examined by 2 independent physicians, one in September 2022 and one in March 2023, specifically and formally for the purpose of attesting to her mental competency and testamentary capacity. Both physicians produced signed and notarized letters on their practice letterhead attesting in unambiguous language that Cecilia Diane Voss was of sound mind and had full capacity to make her own legal decisions. She says that these letters are in the file and will be entered into evidence. She says that Cecilia also produced, in the presence of 2 adult witnesses who are unrelated to any party in the proceeding, a recorded video statement. She says the statement was produced in March of 2023 and is approximately 6 minutes and 40 seconds in length. She says that in this statement, Cecilia speaks in her own words about her estate decisions, her reasons for those decisions, her relationship with each party, and her intention. She says the statement is clear and coherent and shows no sign of confusion or undue influence. She says this with a small precision that tells me she has watched it multiple times. She says that Cecilia also kept personal journals from 2019 onward, in which she documented, contemporaneously, specific conversations and events as they occurred. She says these journals contain dated entries that directly address the behavior of multiple parties and that establish, over several years, a consistent and documented account of Cecilia's reasoning and observations. She says, this is one of the best prepared cases I have had in 22 years of estate law. I am at my kitchen table. My tea is in front of me. The light is coming through the east windows, that morning winter light that is bright and low and makes everything look more permanent than it is. I am thinking about her at her kitchen table in the evenings. Writing in a journal after reading the seed catalog, maybe, being careful, documenting, knowing that this was coming and preparing for it the way she prepared for everything, which is without drama and without waste. Margaret Hallstrom gives me the hearing date. March 14th, 2024. The Montgomery County Probate Court, 41 North Perry Street in Dayton. She says she needs me to appear. She says to dress appropriately, which I take to mean professionally. She says she will send documents by email and that I should read them and sign where indicated and return them by mid-February. I say thank you. She says she thought very highly of you. I do not know exactly what to do with that on the phone, so I say thank you again and we hang up. The 6 weeks between that call and March 14th pass in the way that important intervals pass when you are doing other work, which is to say they pass quickly and also seem very long. I go to Westview, I see my clients, I supervise my practicum students, I run in the mornings when it is not too cold to run and use the treadmill at the gym 3 blocks from my apartment when it is. I see Dr. Park on alternating Thursdays and I tell her what has happened, some of it, the parts that are mine to tell in that room, and she listens and asks good questions and at one point says, "It sounds like she saw you very clearly," and I say yes and she lets that sit. I drive to Dayton on March 12th. I stay at a Holiday Inn Express on Miller Lane for $59 a night, which I charge to the credit card I use for travel and which the estate will eventually reimburse as a legal expense, though I do not know that yet. I order a pizza from a place called Marion's Piazza on Smithville Road that has been a Dayton institution since 1965 and which my aunt introduced me to when I was 17, and I eat it watching something on my laptop that I will not be able to tell you about because I was not really watching it. I was just letting the sound and light of it be company. I sleep well, this surprises me. My body has been in a low-grade alert for 6 weeks, and on the night before something I have been moving toward for months, it simply lets go. I wake up at 6 feeling the specific clarity that comes from having slept fully through a night of concern. I shower, I put on the gray blazer, the one from 2021, the one that fits exactly right. I put on dark pants and low heels and I look at myself in the bathroom mirror for a moment. I look like a professional woman who has a hearing to attend. I look like myself. I put the cream-colored envelope in my purse. I know I will not need it in the courtroom. I take it anyway. The Montgomery County Probate Court is on North Perry Street in downtown Dayton, in a building that has the specific gravity of institutional architecture, solid and deliberate and designed to communicate permanence. I park in the structure 2 blocks away at a meter and I walk. The morning is cold, 28 degrees, that late winter cold that has no humidity in it, just brightness. My breath is visible. My footsteps on the sidewalk are sharp and clear. I find the courtroom and I go in and I sit in the gallery. I have a few minutes before anyone official arrives and I look at the room. Wood paneling, overhead lighting the color of winter. The smell of institutional space, the particular smell of a room that processes difficult things all day and is not surprised by any of them. 2 tables facing the judge's bench. The seal of the state of Ohio on the wall. Then I look at the table on the right side of the room and my parents are there. They came early, or they arrived before me, which is possible, which is also something they do. They always arrive early to things. My father was the kind of man who was already in his seat at church when the organ started. They are sitting with their attorney, a man in a charcoal suit with silver cufflinks who is writing on a legal pad with the efficiency of someone doing this on autopilot. My father is in his blue sport coat, the one he wears to things, the good one. My mother is in a dark blazer, her hair done the way she does it for important occasions, and from behind I can see the set of her shoulders, very straight, very contained. I have not seen them in 4 years. They look the same. My father's hair is fully gray now, which is new or new to me. It was salt and pepper in 2019. My mother holds herself identically. There is nothing in their posture that suggests they know I am in the room yet. Then my mother turns, I think to say something to the man sitting next to my father, and her line of sight sweeps across the gallery and finds me and stops. 4 years, and we find each other across a courtroom. Her expression does not collapse or change dramatically. What it does is get still, very still, the way something that has been in motion stops. My father follows her line of sight and he sees me and he blinks once slowly. He looks older than I expected, not diminished, just older. I hold the eye contact for a moment and then I look away. I look at the front of the room, the judge's bench, the seal on the wall. Something in my throat tightens and then a beat later loosens. I am not angry. I need to say this because I know it is not what you expect. I am not performing calm. I am genuinely not angry, which surprises me too. What I am is something I have been building toward for 4 years and that I only recognize in this moment, which is clear. I can see the room. Clearly, I can see the four of us in it clearly. I can see what all of us have come to this place to do. I can see what Cecilia built and what it took to build it and who it is for. I can see that I am going to be all right. Margaret Hallstrom arrives at 8:55 and finds me in the gallery. She shakes my hand, the firm professional shake of someone who has done this many times and never lets it become careless. She says good morning. She guides me to the left table and I sit and she opens her organized leather folder and she is ready. The proceedings begin at 9 o'clock sharp. Judge Carol Reinhardt comes in and the courtroom stands and then sits. She is in her mid-50s, composed, with the particular expression of someone who has been listening to people under stress for a long time and has become very good at hearing what is underneath what is said. The opposing attorney, my parents' lawyer, presents his case. He is competent and prepared and he is working with what he has, which is not much. He speaks about Cecilia's declining health in the period before she signed the will. He argues that the relationship between Cecilia and the named beneficiary, meaning me, was limited in recent years, which is a version of the truth that leaves out almost everything true about it. He uses the phrase susceptible to external influence. He says it carefully. He is not wrong to try. I would try too if I were him. My mother's hands are folded on the table in front of her. Her attorney's pen moves on the legal pad. My father is looking at the middle distance ahead of him with the focused expression of a man listening to something difficult and trying to hold it steady. Margaret Hallstrom presents her case. She is patient. She does not rush. She presents the physician letters, explaining each one before she enters it into the record. The September 2022 letter from Dr. Marcus Webb of Grandview Medical Associates, a copy of which I now have in the manila folder in my purse. The March 2023 letter from Dr. Susan Killarney of Lifespan Cardiology on East 3rd Street in Dayton, who treated Cecilia directly and attested to her mental clarity specifically in the context of estate planning. She presents the witness signing documentation. She presents the journal excerpts, several pages of which Judge Reinhardt reads herself, sitting forward slightly with her reading glasses on. Then Margaret Hallstrom says she would like to play a portion of the recorded statement. She sets up the small speaker on the table and she presses play. Cecilia's voice comes into the room. It comes into the room the way she came into any room, which is without announcement. Her voice is clear and measured and sounds exactly like her, and in that courtroom full of institutional quiet, it fills the space completely. She says, I am Cecilia Deanne Voss. I am 70 years old. Today's date is March 21st, 2023. I am making this statement of my own free will in the presence of the two witnesses who have signed the accompanying affidavit, and I am doing so with complete clarity of mind. I want the record to reflect both the decisions I have made and the reasons for those decisions. She pauses, a small pause, the way she pauses when she is about to say something she has been turning over. She says, I have known my niece Alina Marie Voss since the day she was born. I have watched her grow into a person of significant integrity, and I use that word deliberately. Integrity means wholeness. It means that what a person does in private and what they present in public are the same. Alina has that quality. I have observed it over many years and in many circumstances, including circumstances that would have justified a different response than the one she chose. She says, I am leaving my estate, including the property at 7841 Farmersville Road, Germantown, Ohio, and the contents of my savings account to Alina Marie Voss. I am doing this because it is what I want to do and because I have thought carefully about it over a long period. I am not doing it in response to anyone's request. No one has asked me to do this, and in fact, the person I am naming does not know about any of this arrangement. There is a sound at the other table, very small, a breath or a sound at the back of a throat. My mother's hands on the table do not move. Cecilia's voice continues. She says, I want to address the question of undue influence directly because I anticipate it will be raised. Alina did not influence this decision. She was not in a position to. What influenced this decision was decades of observation. What influenced it was clarity about what I value and who embodies those values. What influenced it is very simple. Alina showed up. She has always shown up in the ways that are quiet and consistent and do not require an audience. That matters to me. It matters more than I have perhaps said directly enough in my life. She pauses again. She says, that is my statement. I am satisfied with these arrangements. I am making them in sound mind and full health, and I intend for them to be honored. The recording ends. The courtroom is quiet for a moment. Something in my throat is very tight. I am pressing my feet flat against the floor inside my shoes. I am looking at the edge of the table in front of me. My hands are in my lap. I am aware of my own heartbeat in my ears. Across the room, through my peripheral vision, I can see that my mother is not looking at anything in particular. Her hands are still folded on the table. They have not moved the entire time the recording played. My father is looking forward. The attorney with the legal pad has stopped writing. Judge Reinhardt sits for a moment before she speaks. She asks two procedural questions of Margaret Hallstrom, which get procedural answers. She allows my parents' attorney to make a final brief argument, which he does capably, working with what he has. Then she says that she has reviewed the documentation in its entirety and finds the evidence credible, thorough, and consistent. She says she finds no basis for the claims of testamentary incapacity or undue influence. She says the will is valid as executed and the contest is denied. She says it in about 45 seconds. Most things that take a long time to build toward arrive quietly. This is true of construction. This is true of estrangements. This is true of this particular March morning in a Dayton probate courtroom. 45 seconds and it is over. I exhale. It is a long exhale, the kind your body does when it has been holding something for so long it forgot it was holding. Margaret Hallstrom writes something in her folder. She closes it. She says, "Congratulations," quietly, and she means it, and I believe her. I gather my things, I put my purse on my shoulder, I stand. I touch the outside of my purse once where I can feel the edge of the envelope through the fabric. I do not go to my parents' table. I consider it for about 4 seconds and I know I am not going to, and I know that is the right decision. I walk through the courtroom and out through the corridor and through the front doors of the building. The cold air is the first thing, then the brightness, the main street traffic ordinary and indifferent, a woman pushing. Stroller on the far sidewalk, the Dayton morning going about its business. I start toward the parking structure. I have walked about half a block when I hear the door behind me. Footsteps, quick ones, I keep walking, they catch up. My mother says my name. Alina. I stop, I turn around. She is standing about 8 feet from me on the sidewalk, coat open against the cold because she came out without taking time to button it, purse over one shoulder, her hair slightly displaced from the wind. She looks cold. She looks, for the first time in my memory, as though she has arrived somewhere without knowing how to proceed. She is looking at me the way you look at something you thought you knew the dimensions of and have found you were wrong about. There is a long pause, a car passes between the parked ones. Someone is shoveling a step 2 buildings down. My mother opens her mouth. She closes it. She is pressing her lips together in the specific way I know from my entire childhood, the way she does when she is holding something back that wants to come out. Her eyes are wet. She is not crying exactly. She is at the edge of it. I wait. I am not going to help her with this. I am not unkind about it, but I am not going to provide the words. She has to find them herself. She says Cecilia always did love you best. It is not an apology. It is not fully an accusation. It is something older than both of those things, something that comes from somewhere underneath the last 4 years, from the specific pain of a person who has been looking in the wrong places and has just in a courtroom had that demonstrated in the most unmistakable possible terms. I look at her for a moment, the cold, her open coat, her wet eyes. I say yes, she did. And then I turn around and I keep walking. I am not proud of it, I am not sorry for it. It is what I had, it is all I had, and it was honest. I walk the 2 blocks to the parking structure. I take the elevator to the 3rd floor. I find my car, unlock it, get in. I sit, I run the heat. I put my hands on the wheel for a minute and I look at the concrete wall in front of me. Then I reach into my purse and I take the envelope out. I hold it in both hands, her handwriting, the tape on the flap, the E in a leaner wider than the rest. I fold it carefully along the crease that is already there. I put it in the inside left pocket of my coat. I button the coat over it. Then I sit for a minute more. I think about the seed catalogs. I think about the raised bed along the south fence in September. I think about her voice in that courtroom, filling the institutional quiet with her left slanting directness, saying, "She showed up, she has always shown up." I start the car. I have a patient at 2 o'clock. I have an hour and 40-minute drive back to Columbus and a late March afternoon to get through and soup to make on Sunday. I pull out of the parking structure and into the Dayton morning. The property transfer is completed in May of 2024. The assessed value of the house at 7841 Farmersville Road is $218,000. The savings account disburses to me at $116,400 after legal fees and court costs are accounted for. Margaret Hallstrom oversees the process without drama and with consistent precision. I sign things, I receive documents. By the 1st of June, I am the owner of a house in Germantown, Ohio, an hour from Columbus with a raised bed along the south fence. I drive out to see it in April while the transfer is still processing. A weekday morning, a Wednesday after I have taken the morning off from Westview, I drive out on I-70 and then south on 35 and I pull into the driveway of 7841 Farmersville Road and I sit. The house looks the same: white siding, dark green shutters, the glider on the front porch. The yard has the particular look of early April, everything brown and wet and poised, the kind of before the fact that is easy to overlook if you don't know that in a few weeks it will be entirely different. I get out of the car and I walk around to the backs. The raised bed along the south fence has last year's tomato cages in it, rust-colored wire against the gray April sky. The bird feeder on the post still has seed in it. A chickadee is there when I come around the corner and does not leave. It is watching me assess the situation. I stand in the yard. The ground is soft under my feet, that specific soft of thawing earth. I can feel it through my shoes. The light is flat and pale, the particular April light that means something is about to change. I am not ready to decide what comes next. I am not ready to know whether I will keep this house or sell it or something in between. I am giving myself permission to not know. This is something I have been working on in my alternating Thursday sessions, this specific skill, the skill of tolerating uncertainty without immediately managing it. What I know is this. I know that a woman who loved me spent years building something careful and solid, building it in the way that she built everything, which was without waste and without drama, checking the record and documenting and writing in journals and working with a law firm and making statements to recording devices in the presence of witnesses. She built all of this while I was running on the Olentangy Trail and eating soup and seeing Dr. Park and doing the ordinary continuous work of a life in the aftermath of a loss. She built it so that I would not have to carry it. She carried it for me. She did this because she could, and because it was the most useful thing she could do. This is what love looks like sometimes. It does not always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up as a cream-colored envelope with clear tape on the flap and your name in a slanted hand, sitting in a coat pocket for 4 months until TH. Envelope is in my coat, it will stay there a while longer. Some things you carry because they are yours, some things you carry because someone trusted you with them, and sometimes, if you are very lucky, those two things are the same.